Morning, everyone, and welcome to East Renfrewshire Council Cabinet meeting on Thursday, 7th of September. We have all members of the Cabinet here today, so no apologies. Any declarations of interest? No. So if we can move on to item number 3, which is the review of Strategic Risk Register and Risk Management Progress. And Jill will be taking this paper. Thanks, Jill.
Good morning. This report provides the latest annual update of the Council's Strategic Risk Register and a summary of risk management progress. The previous update of the Strategic Risk Register was considered by the Cabinet on the 10th of November 2022 and by the Audit and Scrutiny Committee on the 30th of March 2023. The Strategic Risk Register, Appendix 1 to this report, sets out the key strategic risks to be considered by East Renfrewshire Council and details the actions that management has put in place to manage these risks. A review of all risks has been taken recently, and currently 5 risks remain as high, 2 risks were rescored from high to medium, 3 risks were rescored from medium to high, 6 risks were added to the register, 2 risk descriptions were revised to reflect the current position or to provide further clarity, and 3 risks have been removed from the Strategic Risk Register. Within the report, a risk tolerance map is included and the risk distribution by strategic outcome. The risk appetite, as approved by the Cabinet in February this year, is included for information at this time. The Strategic Risk Register is reported every 6 months to the Audit and Scrutiny Committee and annually to the Cabinet. In summary, there are now 36 on the Risk Register, of which 11 are classified as high. The Corporate Management Team continues to discuss and review the Strategic Risk Register on a regular basis, and it remains a standing item on the agenda. In terms of wider risk management work, a revised risk management strategy and framework 2023 to 25 was approved by the Cabinet in February this year, and 8 elected members attended a risk management training course with the slides being circulated to all elected members for information afterwards. Cabinet is asked to consider and to note the development of the Strategic Risk Register, considering that it is a live document and will be updated and amended by the Corporate Management Team as appropriate. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Jill. Any questions from Cabinet members? No. Jill, I've got a few sort of questions, comments, if you don't mind. Very good report, high quality, as we always receive, so thanks very much for that. Just going through some of the really section 9 and section 10 of the report rather than the appendices. I think it's right to identify the risk on care and care at home. We're seeing that, and the budget pressures certainly having an impact there. 9.5, I was a bit surprised that you had participatory budgeting as a high. I thought this was a guidance rather than statutory. So I wonder if any comment on that?
We're happy to look at that again later next time we review this. I think we've put it as a high because it is guidance, but it's a causal agreement with the government that we'll try and hit a 1% target, and the council hasn't been hitting its 1% target. So I think that was why we'd highlighted it for the return that would need to go in. But I'm happy to look at that again for the next time. Thanks.
On a sort of similar theme, 11.1 on the risk assessment of government funding. I actually thought we were already on high, given the pressures we had in last year's budget settlement, and we're only now going to high. So I know Margaret's on board, so maybe she's able to give us some sort of colour on that.
Yes, as Jill said, we review the register throughout the year on a weekly basis, and once we get confirmation of the grant level and have processed that and squared the budget, we would review that risk again once we know what we're dealing with, and perhaps, you know, for the coming year the risk has been mitigated because we have certainty and we've managed to get a budget that fits in with that. But again, we're now in a new budget cycle, we're looking forward and we're not sure what we're going to get. We think we're looking at flat cash again, and therefore it's a higher risk. We're back in the cycle of uncertainty and not sure whether it's going to be easy to balance.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Margaret. Given its topical 12.1 on partial operational loss or restriction of school buildings, I think this is a broader issue in terms of what we've all seen with RAC and the likes. And I know this paper would have been prepared before this became much more public knowledge. I wonder if it's helpful to get some sort of assurances as to where we are on that.
We have inspected all of our schools and other buildings. We haven't got any buildings that fall under that category. Nonetheless, we may undertake some further surveys of a few buildings just to ensure that some of the data we hold is correct. But as things stand, we have no concerns over the issue.
And in the broader estate?
That statement included the broader estate and didn't just refer to schools, but community centres, libraries, etc.
Thank you very much. Another one, 12.5, again, I was surprised to see this as high, which is the analog digital switch, because we've made huge progress on that. And I thought we were sort of near completion of that. So I'm surprised that that is high.
That's me again. I think the reason we've left it at high just now is because there is still, the reason it went to high in the first place was because we were out with control of the timeline around this. So the telecoms companies give you a timeline that you have to work within. We have made very good progress around the analog to digital and the telecare clients and the switch over for them. We are working through the council's estate. The council has, and HSCP, etc., have quite a complex estate of phone lines and alarm lines and old fax lines, and we need to make sure we know what all of those are for, and you do have to take manual action in order to transfer them over to the digital networks. There is a little bit of residual concern. There's about 200 lines that we are still working through to identify what they are. They are the known unknowns, but we are slightly concerned that there might be some unknown unknowns out there, and when those get switched off, there could be an impact that we'll need to get on top of very quickly. The more work we do, the less that should be a risk for us, but right now it's been left at high just so we can do that final piece of work. I do suggest that this one will probably move to the operational registers by the time we do the next update though. Right.
Very helpful update, thank you very much. Unless there are any other questions on this report, can we go to the recommendations? The Cabinet is asked to consider and note the development of the Council's Strategic Risk Register, noted that it is considered a live document given the conversations we've heard today, and will be updated and amended by the corporate management team as appropriate. Are we comfortable with that? Agreed. So thank you very much for that. So moving on to item number 4, Freedom of Information Council Performance 22-23. And who's taking this report? It's Craig Geddes. Thanks, Craig.
Thanks, Chair. An annual report on FOI performance has been submitted to Cabinet since the legislation first came into force in 2005. And this report presents a statistical summary of the information requests received by the Council over the financial year 2022-23. During the period of this report, we received some 1,364 requests under the Freedom of Information Scotland Act and the related environmental information regulations, which was an increase of some 20% on the previous year, taking us back up towards the pre-COVID peak in terms of volume of requests. The report notes the successful implementation of our FOI improvement plan, following on from the Level 1 intervention by the Scottish Information Commissioner in November 2021. The reports that the Council dealt with 93% of requests within the statutory timescale of 20 working days, which is our highest proportion of requests answered on time since the start of FOI. As in previous years, the considerable majority, 86% of requests were answered in full, with most of the remainder refused on grounds that the information was not held or that it was otherwise available. It's recommended that Cabinet notes the contents of the reports, but I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Craig. Any questions on this report? Craig, thanks very much for the report. I think it's obviously performance has improved in terms of response, so it's good to note that. Disappointing that total volume is increasing again, and I think we need to note the impact that this has on council resources and the time that it's taken, of senior officer time to deal with these. So thank you very much for that, and good to see improved performance in response time. So thank you. So if Cabinet can now go to the recommendation, which is recommended that the Cabinet notes the contents of this report. All agreed? Agreed. Thank you. So moving on to the next item of the agenda, which is the item number 5, which is Chief Executive Office End Year Performance Report 22-23. And who will be giving this report? It's Craig again. Thanks, Craig.
Thanks again, Chair. This paper presents the year-end report for the Chief Executive's Office for the year 2022-23. The report summarises the performance of the Office and details various metrics for each section. The report highlighted the range of work undertaken by the services within Chief Executive's Office. The Chief Executive's Office continues to manage a diverse range of responsibilities, and despite staff shortages in a number of areas supporting the Council, the East Renfrewshire Culture and Leisure Trust and the Health and Social Care Partnership. The body of the report details performance indicators for each section of the Chief Executive's Office and includes comparative figures from previous years to allow an assessment of progress over time. And again, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Craig. Councillor Pragnell.
Thank you for the report. It's much appreciated. I have a concern about the internal audit. I know there has been vacancies for some time now. So I know there's a shortage of auditors across the country, but is there anything more we can do to try and attract people to come to East Renfrewshire? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, for your question. I think it goes wider than just internal audit, that we must ensure that we do everything to attract all professional services. It's not just internal audit, but you're right to pull that up. And it's something we will focus on as a priority, is how we are viewed as an employer in respect of how we look after and work with our staff, in respect of professional development opportunities, in respect of them having time to develop their own professional duties, and the environment that we offer to come and work in East Renfrewshire. So all of these things are really important about how we attract the best people into East Renfrewshire, and then that we keep them here, and that they see this as an attractive organisation to come and work for. And that is going to be part of our focus and our priority moving forward, which would hopefully also include getting the vacancies dealt with within internal audit. But you're right to pull that up. Thank you.
Any other questions? Do you want to go on? Councillor Anderson.
Thanks for that response, Stephen, because it actually potentially answers or reflects on something I was going to mention in terms of the actual performances in legal services and procurement as well, and given the vacancies and given the actual level of work and quantity that the council officers are actually managing to get through, is what concerns me though is because of the short staff that we're very conscious of the duty of care to the staff, and we believe, and I can hear from what you're saying, it's in terms of support for the staff. I think I may have asked about this before, just wanting to ensure that I know Sharon's not here, but from an HR perspective, that we're still, actually talking to people, making sure they're coping okay.
Councillor Anderson, absolutely. We are working just now on a health and wellbeing strategy for our staff that will be brought to our corporate management team very soon. We have, through some of the COVID money that we had, you'll remember that we allocated a staff wellbeing officer. So Charlie Jackson has been here and has been working with a number of our services out and about, talking to them. We've had Charlie talk to services as a result of, we did a staff wellbeing survey not so long ago. So Charlie's been working with us to help analyse the results of those survey areas and go out and talk to the services. Just last week we instituted the health checks again for our employees. So we had some health checks going on in this building using a local provider to come in and just do some basic health checks with staff, and some staff have actually had referrals onward to GP as a result of that. So it's very good that that's been picked up proactively. We're also doing a dedicated day at the depot and a dedicated day for facilities management staff as well. So that's given staff a chance to talk to somebody and see how they feel as well. And it's just part of a suite of things that we're doing to try and address staff wellbeing and make sure that people are coping. We're also proactively looking at workloads and things and looking at staffing levels to try to make sure that we're not putting staff under undue pressure. Thank you.
Thanks, Louise.
Thanks very much. Any other questions? Sure. Oh, Margaret would like to come in. Margaret McCausland.
Yes, it's just to say that the issue of filling professional vacancies is something that Michelle, the Chief Auditor, and myself have discussed on a number of occasions. We've both gone out to advertise for staff a number of times in recent years with varying success. However, just recently I've advertised and successfully filled 2 posts within accountancy, because again, we feel we're right on the wire. We just have to get these posts filled to make sure we can continue the service. I'm liaising with Michelle on that, and I know that she is intending to go back out and try to advertise again in the coming months.
Thanks, Margaret. I'd just like to add, I think it's very helpful. I really welcome this report. It's very helpful to see the breadth and depth of the function of legal services, procurement and accountancy services, very often hidden from the public in terms of the activities they do, but huge amounts of important work that's happening in those areas. So I really thank the Chief Exec for the report and the performance report for this year. So if we can go to the recommendations for this paper, which is that Cabinet scrutinise performance of Chief Executive Office and notes the report as a summary of the Chief Exec's Office end year performance for 22-23. Are we agreed with that? Thank you very much. So if we can move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item number 6, updated draft of East Renfrewshire's Gaelic Language Plan 23-28. And this report is going to be taken by Louise. Thank you, Louise.
Thank you. Today's report seeks approval of the Council's Gaelic Language Plan for 23-28. This is a requirement of the Gaelic Language Scotland Act 2005 and has the aim of raising the status and profile of Gaelic. Our plan is due with Bord na Gaelic by the 1st of October. We did bring our first draft of this plan to Cabinet in May and then had to go to a statutory consultation, a required consultation on the plan. That ran between mid-May and June, and we had 157 responses to that consultation. And the way that our consultation platform works, you can agree with other people's comments. So we had a further 324 agreements with comments, so those get counted as well. The report outlines the mixed views of the consultation, with many comments centred around the perception of the need for a plan rather than the content of the plan itself. So as a result, while the cover report outlines some of that, the content of the plan itself hasn't changed much as a result of the consultation. There were a few minor amendments required, and none of which affect the actions in the plan. And it's very much a prescriptive format that's set for us in terms of how those plans should look. There's no designated budget for this plan, and any actions that we take will be within existing resource. However, we were able to bid into a national fund, so the update that we've made in the paper is that we've been able to get £720 from that fund nationally, which will help us a bit with some of the publicity and the implementation we need to make.
Thanks very much, Louise. Any comments on this paper? Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the report, and I think it's very interesting to actually hear about the public feedback in the consultation, and I think our approach is exactly right. I think it's obviously there's statutory obligations that we have to, and I think the way we're going about it. So to see the changes, not necessarily the content, but of the potential approach is appropriate, Louise. So thanks very much for the report.
Thanks very much for that. And so if we can go on to the recommendations from the paper, which is to consider and comment on the updated draft of the Gaelic Language Plan and note the funding awarded to the Council through Gaelic Plans Fund for the purpose of Gaelic awareness training. We agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. So moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is item number 7, which is Louise again, which is Business Operations and Partnerships Department End Year Performance Report 22-23. Thank you, Louise.
Thank you. As you see, this report brings back the Business Operations and Partnerships End Year Performance for 22-23. As Cabinet's aware, the Department's responsible for a range of strategic and support services and also a number of frontline service areas. I think the report does give a really detailed picture of the range of activities and performance delivered across the year and highlights some of the key challenges we're facing in terms of long-standing roles due to retirement and some vacancies. The report also highlights a number of our services who've continued to experience increased demand as a result of the pandemic and cost of living crisis, and year-on-year budget reductions have also been a challenge in some areas. Our ambitions do, however, remain high, and our staff are hugely committed. And as well as a backward look, the report gives a bit of an outline about our key priorities for the year ahead. We will be reviewing the format of these reports going forward and maybe trying to get to more of an evaluative set of reports and maybe briefer format in the future. But in the meantime, I would commend this report to you and would like to take the opportunity to thank my staff for all their hard work and commitment across the year. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Louise. Any questions? Councillor Pragnell.
It's more a mere comment. I think not many people understand what your department does and how important it is to the running of the council, as well as, of course, education, the HSCP and environment. I would just like to highlight how much I valued the support for new elected members. The training programme coming in as a first-time councillor was really useful, and I had more training yesterday, so I think it's really important that elected members take up on this training and this offer, but it has definitely helped and supported me in the role, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? I would echo Councillor Pragnell's comments. Really welcome this report. I think it's very helpful to see the breadth and depth of the functions of business operations and partnerships. It's really very wide and encompasses a lot of interactions with our residents, which is welcome. Somewhat, again, sort of hidden. People aren't fully aware of all of these services that are done, so it's helpful to see this in the report. Clearly strains with budget pressures, but still having the ambition to deliver to the best of your ability. So we really thank you and the team and the staff for all of that. I do have one minor, and I should have raised this with you earlier, and apologies for this, and you can take this offline. There was a cost per dwelling of collecting council tax, which has gone up by 20% or so from the previous year. Seemed odd. So I'm happy for you to take that separately if you're comfortable to do that.
Yeah, we can take that separately. I don't have that briefing with me today. We do go into that one in quite a lot of detail in our annual benchmarking report that comes before Cabinet. I think there's quite a complex set of calculations that go on that, and within the service itself, they don't always have huge control of what goes into the calculation of that. We have seen our costs for council tax collection go up in recent years, mainly due to the implementation of our new system, because when you're putting in a system like that, you need to have your project team and you need to have your system developers costed in amongst that as well. So that has accounted for some of the rise in previous years. But we need that to be able to keep the system going. What I would say is that we've made year-on-year budget cuts to the revenues and benefits service, and so we are seeing the efficiencies coming out of the new system that is allowing us to do that. So it's a bit of a balance round about that area, but happy to talk to you in more depth.
Okay, and to be fair, you do say you don't have the 23 figure till October, and the figure I was referring to was 21-22, which would certainly encompass when you were doing the project implementation. So we can pick that up separately. So thank you very much for that, Louise. And can we go to the recommendations of the paper? Make sure I've got the right recommendation. Yes. So Cabinet is asked to scrutinise the performance of business operations and partnership and notes this report as a summary of the business operations and partnerships end year performance for 22-23. Are we agreed with that? Agreed. Thank you very much, Louise. Moving on to item number 8, lettings policy review, report by Director of Environment, and Phil Dawes will be taking this. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you. The purpose of this report is to seek approval of the updating letting targets for existing and new build council housing The existing policy was reviewed and approved by Cabinet in January 2023. It is quite complicated, so I would draw members' attention to paragraph 8. We operate what is known as a choice-based letting system, which is designed to allow the applicant to have an element of choice in which property they would wish to live in. In previous years, one was just allocated a house and one either had to accept or decline it. So currently the system is applicants who are interested in a property can bid for it in a similar manner that a letting agent would use, and provided it is open to their priority pass. The system is split into 5 different priority passes, as outlined there at paragraph 8, for including homeless people and people who require to be rehoused as a result of a medical issue. The lettings targets are in place to ensure that households with a lower housing need, i.e. people who are not deemed to be homeless, can still access council housing. It can be very difficult to meet the exact targets because that's dependent upon which people bid for which particular property. Due to the increase in demand from homeless households, almost all of the properties are targeted towards the priority A group. So previously, for existing ERC homes, the priority target for homeless households was 50%, and the previous review increased that to a target of 70%. One of the issues in relation to homelessness, and this is flagged at paragraph 6, is the size of the general list of people has increased from approximately 2,800 in 2018-19 to over 6,000 to the local authority for 23 years, and I've never seen such demands for social housing as exists at the moment. We have been actively working with all of the homeless households to encourage them to make bids on all of the available properties. Obviously, the existence of the new build properties in a way that makes that much more difficult, because if a new build property becomes available at the same time as an existing council house becomes available, the majority of applicants will bid for the new property and not for the existing property. One can understand that, where given that not everybody therefore can be successful, that can increase the workload for staff. But that is deemed to be appropriate because it means that we take a person-centred approach to the issue, and we aren't just allocating houses in a kind of simple and administrative manner. As noted at paragraph 8, homeless numbers continue to increase, and so more work is being undertaken in relation to homeless prevention. So the proposal is that the existing letting targets that were approved by Cabinet in January 2023 continue. Before the existing policy was undertaken, we undertook an extensive consultation process by writing directly to all applicants on the housing waiting list, and it was also promoted on the council's social media platforms, and the vast majority of respondents were supportive of the proposed changes. So as such, I'm happy to recommend this policy and paper to Cabinet.
Thank you very much, Phil. Councillor Dick.
We're going to have serious problems in the next couple of years with allocating properties to homeless applicants. And I know our families have been waiting 18 months for a council house, and they're still not being housed. I mean, if you look at the stats here, 392 people presented themselves as homeless this financial year, and we only house roughly 200 people. So that's 200 people next year we need to house. So these figures are just going to accumulate, they're going to double, they're going to treble, I don't know. But I've got a fear, a big fear for the next few years when it comes to homelessness. And I think one of the only ways out of this is we need to build more council houses. I'm led to believe there's a kind of 2-year blip, from say today to the next couple of years, we won't be building any more council houses. I think we need to try and bring, our programme forward if we can. And we need to reach out to the other registered social landlords within East Wren to probably use the word plead with them to, get their act together and build more social housing. So we're done.
Any other comments? I'd like to echo Councillor Devlin's comments on this. I welcome the report, but I don't welcome the data and the statistics within it. They are quite stark and very, very concerning. This lettings policy, which we have discussed, I think, twice before in a similar amount, was supposed to be emergency lettings policy. There's no sign of moving that. It feels like business as usual rather than an emergency policy. So I think that this needs to become more of a priority for the councils at large in terms of how do we address this. The housing stock, Councillor Devlin's absolutely right. I think in paragraph 5, I wonder if it'd be helpful to try to, so that we understand the full council picture, to understand what's coming on stream from housing associations as well. So we've got that sort of total picture of what's going on. They might be accelerating build while we have a blip, and it'd be just helpful to know what the total position is on that. But clearly we need to work together on solving the underlying issues here.
Okay. In relation to the actual data for paragraph 5 in terms of what's coming on stream, I don't have that available, but the council's strategic housing investment programme, which is agreed by cabinet each year, is coming to cabinet in October, and that provides detail of the number of affordable housing, that's both social housing for rent and low cost home ownership housing, for both the council and for other social landlords. That is coming to cabinet in October for approval. I would agree with both Councillor O'Donnell and Councillor Devlin in terms of that the numbers are concerning. I would also suggest that obviously there's been a number of increase in interest rates in the last 6 months. Some people will have deals that haven't yet come to an end, so will still be on the old rates. So I think it would be reasonable to assume that we may see an increase in mortgage defaults in the next 6 to 12 months, and consequently the pressure may get worse before it gets better. In relation to the building of council homes, there are 2 factors that we need to take into account when we're building new council houses. One is the availability of land, and one is the capacity of the landlord to borrow money to fund, because although we receive subsidy from the Scottish Government, a council house build can cost somewhere between £150,000 to £160,000. The subsidy we receive from the Scottish Government is around £70,000, so the difference between the two the council needs to borrow. We are curtailed by prudential borrowing requirements as to how much we can borrow. However, members will be aware that the paper for the sale of the land at Barhead South was approved by council in June. Once the receipt of that sale comes through, the housing revenue account business plan will have a greater capacity to borrow. So one of those 2 constraints in relation to increasing the number of council house building will be addressed. And working with colleagues in relation to LDP2 and LDP3, we are looking to make more land fit for purpose that we can build on, and therefore would hope to increase the size of the council house building programme. So hopefully that will give cabinet some reassurance.
And just to add on to that, Phil, I don't know if you're alluding to it or not, but there's the 30-year housing strategy, which should also give us some sort of idea of capacity for future build within that. Is that really already talk about that?
That's the review of the housing revenue account business plan, and that will be completed once the receipts in relation to the sale of Barhead South has been finalised.
Okay.
Thanks, Leader. Just putting the council aside for a moment, we've got a housing association within East Renfrewshire that's pleading for land. I believe they've got the finances. They're pleading for land to build houses. Surely we should make that one of our priorities, or to give them the land. I don't know at what cost, but just to give them the land and let them go ahead with their programme to build social housing.
I think we do regard land as a significant priority for the council, and we are doing all we can to make the land available for housing. And as I say, that's currently addressed in LDP2 and it'll be looked at again as part of LDP3.
I mean, I don't care who builds social housing as long as we get them built.
I think the cabinet agrees with that approach. We're agnostic as to who builds it, as long as we have the appropriate stock in the council area. Happy to move to the recommendations on the report. Cabinet are asked to note the ongoing and sustained demand for council housing in East Renfrewshire Council, in particular the increase in homelessness, and approve the proposed letting targets for existing and new build council housing. We agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much, Phil. So moving on to the next item in the agenda, which I think might be Phil again, which is proposed fleet purchasing policy for Get to Zero.
Thank you.
It's over to Phil. Thank you.
The purpose of this report is to seek approval for a new fleet purchasing policy, which will support the ambitions set out by the Scottish Government's climate change plan and form part of the Council's Get to Zero action plan. The Scottish Government's climate change plan made the following public policy expectations for public sector fleet, and this is noted at paragraph 3. And that is that after 2025, all cars being used would be electric from 2025 to 2026. And between 2025 and 2030, public bodies should cease the purchase of vans and light commercial vehicles with internal combustion engines. Now, noted at paragraph 4, there is no legal requirement to fulfil this policy expectation, and no supporting funds from the Scottish Government to assist with this transition. So therefore, each local authority must configure their own level of compliance against the cost and practicality of undertaking these commitments. Paragraph 5 notes the number of vehicles that the council has at the moment with internal combustion engines. Thornleybank Depot is the main base for the majority of council fleet, but at the moment it doesn't have the capacity to, if we were, for example, to replace all of our fleet overnight with electric vehicles, Thornleybank Depot doesn't have sufficient power to charge them. The depot is currently utilising 90% of its available electrical capacity that's supplied via the national grid. £400,000 is already included in the capital programme for 2024-25 for the installation of a substation which will address that issue. Lessons that we have learned from other projects that have begun the transition to electric vehicles before us have shown that securing the electrical power requirements for charging vehicles is vital prior to purchasing any vehicles. Clearly, we wouldn't wish to purchase vehicles if we weren't able to charge them. So because of that delay, we can't proceed to switching over to electric vehicles straight away. Several factors were taken into consideration to reach the recommendations that we have outlined for our proposed fleet purchasing policy, and these were both the charging capacity and also logistical constraints in terms of space at the depot, and also the operational requirements of services such as HSEP and the housing service. So consequently, the proposed approach is outlined at paragraph 12, and that is where the current depot charging can accommodate them, cars with an internal combustion engine will be replaced by electric vehicles at the end of their current life. Where the current depot charging cannot accommodate them, the life and use of current internal combustion engine cars will be extended into 25-26 and 26-27 to accommodate the time to provide the time for a new charging facility to be secured. And from 27-28, all cars operating will be electric ones. If the proposal is agreed by Cabinet, the next stages would be provide a plan for each of the fleet user services such as road, housing, HSEP, etc., with updated capital cost projections. We will then undertake further work to look at the space and the garaging and the workshop and the charging requirements that are needed. Paragraph 15 notes that if we were to replace our current cars and vans with internal combustion engine vehicles, it would cost around £4.7 million. If we were to replace them with electric vehicles, it would cost an estimated £7 million, which is clearly an additional £2.3 million. As I noted earlier, no additional funding is provided by the Scottish Government for this. We do anticipate that capital costs for electric vehicles will decrease in the next few years as the market for these types of vehicles increases and expands. In terms of implications of the proposals, we believe that retaining the status quo, i.e. continuing with our internal combustion engine vehicles, isn't feasible, as that would impact adversely on the Council's target for net zero carbon emissions by 2045. However, by operating internal combustion engine cars beyond 2025, it does mean that proposed policy doesn't fully meet the Scottish Government's policy expectations, but it does put the Council in a good place to meet these targets in future years. And also the approach we are taking, and this is noted at paragraph 23, the challenges that we face are not unique to us as a council. We have spoken with council officers in Renfrewshire, Western Bartonshire and Eastern Bartonshire, as well as the Fleet Managers Forum, and they all are facing the same issues. So we will not be the only local authority in this position. And as such, I'm happy to recommend the proposed fleet purchasing policy to Cabinet, and happy to take any questions.
Bill. Councillor Anderson.
Thanks for it. So the one thing from hearing what you're saying and also reading through it, and I think is it paragraph 7 or 8 where the lessons learned from First Bus, and the key word here was the power requirements for charging vehicles is vital, and obviously I think the question of the substation has come up before, and it's obviously a key part for the Thornley depot for anything to then move on from there. If it's at 98% already, also the substation. So what's the status with that? And when it can be done and it's there, then we can actually. But if it's not going to be there, then obviously if it's going to take some time, it's going to hold everything back, or a large part of it. Am I right in saying that?
Yes. Well, there's provision in the capital programme for 24-25, so it will begin. Works will begin in April 2024. We expect it to be completed within the year. So as things stand, we don't anticipate any problems or obstacles.
From our perspective, that's what I'm just getting at. Actually, is that for some reason that we are ready to do so, and as the utility companies or whoever it is, we're doing the substation. Obviously, we don't want anything to get in the way of progress for it.
That preparatory work needs to be undertaken. I mean, there are sometimes challenges involved in working with utility companies and to get them to work in our time frame, but that's one of the requirements that will be undertaken of the project manager that's undertaking this task.
Excellent, thanks. Just in addition to that, I'm aware of as well, HSCP, for example, like 15 cars already. And I was down recently at the Eastwoods, the health centre, and I think there's only one charging point currently. Is there any potential or capacity for us to expand on that?
That was a one-off EV charger as part of the build. So it's been there for a long time, and I think it's quite slow. Yeah. We took the EV paper last time as well. So we do have a plan to move forward, and we're obviously in discussions with the Glasgow City region as well, for all councils to look at rolling up EV across the whole region. So that's still in progress at the moment.
Okay, thanks, Gillian. I think that is a key thing. Phil touched on it as well, the partnership working with the other councils to work together on this. Thanks.
Any other questions? If not, Bill, really welcome this report. This is a very tricky situation. We've got no additional funding from the Scottish Government to fund the infrastructure or the capital purchase of these vehicles. So that just adds budget pressure onto the whole organisation. I think what you've got here is a very pragmatic approach to this, which is welcomed, rather than rushing to a target, but potentially incurring greater costs and burdens on the council. So I welcome the report and the approach. So with that, can I go to the recommendations of the paper? which is an extension of the life of the use of cars and vans due for renewal in 25-27, unless they can be charged with the existing electric vehicle EV charging infrastructure. B, no new internal combustion engine cars or vans purchased in 25-26 and 26-27. C, all new cars and vans purchased being EV from 27-28. All cars in operation being EVs by April 27, and all vans in operation being EVs by April 2030. We all agreed with that? Thank you very much, Phil. Much appreciated. So moving on to the next item of the agenda, which is the Environment Department End-Year Performance Report 22-23, and this report will be taken by Katrina. Thank you, Katrina.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning. The purpose of this report is to provide Cabinet with a summary of the Department's performance for last year. Section 3 of the report provides highlights from across the various services, and attached in the appendice is a high-level summary from each of the services based within the Environment Department. First on that list, I'm pleased to say the Council have maintained its position as the top recycling council in Scotland, with 58.1% of all municipal waste being recycled, and that compares with a local authority average of 42.7%. Also highlighted is the work by our trading standards, with the launch of a new initiative called Building Consumer Confidence, and that was supported by the employment of a doorstep fraud prevention officer. It's well known that the team's scam prevention work has been recognised nationally as best practice. Our roads team have replaced over 2,000 street lights with LEDs this year, which means that over 85% of lanterns are now LED, and that has reduced our energy consumption by almost 16% compared with the previous year. The roads team have also completed 51 carriageways and 13 footway resurfacing schemes. Our planning service has been significantly affected by staff vacancies and constraints caused by the pandemic. During last year, the vacancies have now been filled, and we expect that will be a positive impact on performance going forward. And as you will see, 19% of planning applications were determined within the timescale last year. The Greenlaw Works Business Centre, it opened in September 2022 and is currently operating with 85% occupancy, with 27 businesses based there. The Whiteley and the Dams to Darnley Countryside Rangers have also resumed a full programme of events, and last year 185 events were delivered to almost 6,000 participants. The long-term vacant and derelict Cowan Park Gate Lodge has been brought back into use following the successful attraction of government funding, and the building is now open as a new social enterprise hub to serve the local community and visitors to the park in Barrhead. 132 new affordable homes have been built during 2023, and this includes 94 council-owned homes in Maidenhill and Balgristone. As already mentioned, and as of great concern to the Council, we continue to face unprecedented demand for housing from both the general waiting list and homeless households. And we have a waiting list which now sits at over 6,000 people. The Department's results couldn't have been achieved without the excellent partnership working across the Council and with external partners. And personally, I'd like to thank all the teams and staff within the Department. The appendices attached provides that high-level overview summary from each of the services. The three heads of service are all in attendance this morning, so we're happy to take any questions, and it's recommended that Cabinet scrutinise and provide comment on the performance for last year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katrina. Can I open up to questions? Any questions? Katrina, really welcome this report. Similar to the other year-end reports, it's very helpful to see the breadth of services that is provided from the Environment Department. Again, some of these services are not widely known, but are very important. Taking out trading standards as an example, they do a huge amount of preventative work. Great to see again that we're showing in our local benchmarking and in terms of national recognition, in terms of the quality of the services that are being provided. And that again is in the backdrop of significant budget pressures over the last number of years. So I really recommend you and the team for the great work that they're doing on continuing to deliver for the people of East Renfrewshire. So thank you very much for that. So unless there's any other comments, can I go to the recommendation is to scrutinise and provide comment on the Environment Department's performance 22-23. We all agreed? Great, thank you very much. So if we can move on to item number 11, which is decriminalised parking enforcement, proposed increase in penalty charge notice charges, report by Gillian. Thank you, Gillian.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to outline the justification for increasing the charges for penalty charge notices for parking contraventions. The DPE, as I will call it from now, because there's quite a lot of that in the report, enables a local authority to enforce its own parking policies, including the issuing of PCG charges to motorists breaching parking controls in specific areas. Delegated powers were provided to East Renfrewshire in 2013. The current charge is £60 for a parking contravention, and that is reduced to £30 if paid within the first 14 days. Local authorities have raised concerns about the viability of the service with the current level of charges, which has not been increased since 2001. In light of this, the Scottish Ministers issued revised guidance to local authorities in Scotland, notifying them that they could revise the charges. The revised charges was a choice between £80, reduced to £40 if paid within 14 days, or a higher level of £100. We are proposing to go for the £100, subject to approval of Cabinet. The back office function that we work within is within Glasgow City, and that organisation deals with the back office system for 4 councils, which is North Lanarkshire, East Dunbartonshire, East Renfrewshire and Glasgow itself. The local DPE collaboration group has expressed their commitment to adopt the higher level of the PCN charges, with Glasgow Council already publicly announced their plans in March. The final objection of the increased charges is to deter parking contraventions. Thus, 100% compliance with parking restrictions would result in no penalty charges and no income. However, any income from the increased penalty charge notice charges will help with reducing the current financial losses and can be reinvested as per paragraph 16 in the report. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Gillian. Any questions? Councillor Pragnell.
Thank you. I think it's good to see that we're not the outlier here, and other local authorities, especially our neighbouring ones, are implementing the same charges. My one question is, do we have enough wardens to actually implement this and to keep track of people parking illegally?
Yeah, I suppose it's a thing that we monitor ongoing. Stephen Bell, Community Safety Manager, is who we liaise with. He looks after the wardens for us. And just now, for example, if there's particular complaints for an area, we'll go into Stephen and ask him to focus in that area. But with stuff that's coming through the pipeline, such as the footway parking bill, I think in time we'll need to increase numbers, and that'll be reviewed at that point.
Okay, yeah. Councillor Anderson.
I agree with Councillor Pragnell. This is exactly the right thing to do, and obviously, I think one of the key things though is going to be is obviously the public perception. They'll think that we're doing it to make money or something, but they don't necessarily realise. So it's communication is actually important. You know, that our residents understand and know the figures and the numbers and the reasons behind this. in terms of. So I'm not sure how we're going to. Are we going to communicate this via social media, etc., and just to make sure that people understand the background behind it. The people who are going to be annoyed at it, there's what 2,000 people that got one. They're going to be the ones that obviously could be potentially quite vocal. So it's just comms is the intention, obviously, just to try and make sure that everybody, as many people as possible, understands why this is happening.
We'll definitely liaise with comms about this. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, October, the collaboration group we're looking at a date in October for bringing this in. I think I'd maybe a wee bit, might not make it, but anyway, what we'll do is there's 4 weeks lead in. We'll plan with comms 4 weeks lead in to advertise these costs coming in. And as you say, I think people view it as we were trying to, it's covering costs basically, and it's not designed as part of the parking strategy, not designed to make money.
Thanks for that. Just to add, I think it's. Oh, sorry, Councillor Devlin.
Just a question in regards to the financing of the community wardens. Do they obviously, I don't know the percentage of their workloads dealing with, traffic infringements, i.e. parking in where you're not supposed to park. What percentage of their, day is taken up with parking charging?
Thank you, Councillor. I don't have that figures up with Stephen Bell. They've always dog fouling and they've other duties. And yes, if we put up greater pressure for parking demand, for them to be issuing PCN notices, then we're going to have to review that.
The reason I'm asking, could this, extra finance, increase, the employment of another 2 wardens, whatever?
Yeah, but the whole thing about the PCN increases, there might. We're really kind of.
We're going to double that, basically.
Yeah, but the idea of the PCN increase to £100 a ticket is to get compliance, and if we get 100% compliance with parking offences, we don't have any income, but yet we'll still have all the overheads of DPE, the decriminalised parking, so we've still got to pay for Glasgow City Council's back office function, the wardens, promoting traffic regulation orders, so all that, and that's why it's not necessarily going to cover its own cost itself. It's part of the bigger parking strategy. And that'll need to be looked at going forward as well, in terms of covering costs.
So at the end of the day, we're not going to lose money out of it. We're going to get money.
I think, well, as part of the bigger strategy, we'll need to do more to address the current. The last 3 years, our figures are down, but a lot of that was to do with COVID.
Yeah. Basically, the wardens weren't doing the traffic, management, get out and about or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's why obviously the rent comes down. But I'm not saying hopefully it'll increase, but you never know. It's round the corner with parking charges.
So, welcome back.
Yeah, in relation actually to businesses, I'm aware of. This again, it's probably down to the number of wardens and their ability to get to all the different areas where the restrictions are, and because businesses obviously want people to park there transient. It's like a short term thing, and that's what they have enforced in lots of different places, where they have shops and businesses and so forth. Are they, again, aware of this? I imagine they would actually support it, because they'll probably be aware of people parking outside their premises all day, and if they're close to a train station, etc., something like that, and that's where they would actually, I think, support it. I agree, and have businesses given feedback on it?
Okay, so yeah, that's absolutely it, and it's, as I say, it's part of that overall strategy. So promoting traffic regulation orders, for example, and having limited waiting outside shops, so you get that turnover of business, and staff not encouraging staff to park all day in the available parking to make it available for customers, etc. So that's all part of that strategy, and yeah, we'll look at that as TROs come online.
Okay, thanks for that. If I can just add. Well, first of all, to note that we haven't had an increase since 2001. I think that will be a surprise to most people in the council area. I think we would all welcome that it's consistent parking charges as in neighbouring authorities. That makes it more consistent, so it can't play one authority off the other. I think it's important to note the comments on wardens. I think we get a lot of complaints from residents on enforcement of existing regulations and double yellow lines. and quite often it is an issue of capacity of wardens, and our wardens do a lot more than what, again, the public think. It's not just traffic wardens. They do quite a broad range of services, so it's a point to note on that. And finally, this is not a money-making exercise. This is at best reducing our costs to implement it. If we won't even get close to that either. But this is really about compliance and ensuring better compliance. So we welcome that report. So with that, can I go to the recommendations of the paper, which is A, approve increased charges for PCNs in East Renfrewshire that may be charged to motorist parking in contravention of restrictions to £100, reduced to £50 if paid within the first 14 days. And B, approve the reduction of the observation period for loading and unloading activities before a PCN can be issued from 10 minutes to 5 minutes. Are we all agreed with that? Thank you very much. If I may, I'd like to just go back to item 10 for just a brief comment to Katrina on her Environment Department end-year performance report. There has been a request from residents regarding Clarkston Parklets. Now, I understand there is indeed a cabinet paper coming to us. If perhaps, Katrina, you could confirm when that will be coming to cabinet.
That's in the pipeline to come to the October cabinet. Yeah.
So perfect.
We'll be
Thank you
there.
very much for that.
Thanks.
So moving on to the final item of the agenda, item 12, East Renfrewshire Culture and Leisure End-Year Reports 22-23. And this report will be given by Siobhan McColgan. Thank you, Siobhan.
Thank you. The purpose of this report is to inform Cabinet of the performance of the Trust at end year 22-23. It provides a high-level summary based on the performance indicators and activities in the Outcome Delivery Plan and Culture and Leisure Trust Business Plan. Appendix A provides a summary of the Trust's performance with regards to arts, sports, libraries and community facilities. Last year's report to Cabinet on the performance of the services delivered by the Trust commented on the ongoing improvements and recovery following COVID-19. The Trust has continued to build on this recovery, and the report highlights the strong progress they've made in recovering customers across all the business streams despite a challenging background with the cost of living crisis. Achievements are noted in paragraph 8, with additional details included in the balance scorecard. This includes examples such as gym memberships, which are at a record high of 3,173, and that's an increase of 9% over the previous high of 2,910 achieved in 1920. This year's target of 2,465 memberships was exceeded by 28.7%. The theatre has also continued to build its reputation and profile and broke all of its box office records in 22-23 with ticket sales of 640,000 compared to 204,000 in 2021-22. The areas for further improvement include implementing the sports and physical activity strategy and developing an arts and heritage strategy, and fully implementing the transfer of the remaining sports and leisure facilities into the inclusion of the Trust management contract following the transfer on the 11th of August. During 2022-23, the Trust income exceeded budget, which resulted in a significant improvement to the anticipated loss. Operating income was favourable to budget by 777,000, and this was primarily due to sports and theatre income. Increased income and reduced expenditure has resulted in an end-year balance surplus for 22-23 of 193,000. East Renfrewshire Culture and Leisure Trust Best Value Review, which was considered in June 2020 by the Audit and Scrutiny Committee, due to the progress made within the action plan, it's been agreed that this will be closed and business will continue to be overseen by the Director of Education, the Trust Board and its Chief Executive. In summary, the scorecard shows the Trust has recovered well from the challenges that have arisen due to COVID-19. It's continued to strive towards improving customer experiences, meeting its charitable objectives and contributing to the health and well-being of the residents of East Renfrewshire. Cabinet is asked to comment on this report as a summary of the Trust's end year performance for 2022-23. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Siobhan. Any comments? Councillor Anderson, you have to comment given that you're convener for the Trust.
Absolutely, but well, not just because of that, but that's an excellent report. I think the performance has been quite significant. I'm happy, you know, to acknowledge, obviously, you've mentioned about the gym memberships, specifically we were out and so as well with active school coordinators actually doing what they do, and the encouraging the extracurricular opportunities. That's a great thing, and the theatre obviously is just doing incredibly well, and obviously it notes as well the areas for further improvement. But the one thing in particular that and this relates to something else as well, is the performance of the libraries actually. An improvement, and I'm not sure, obviously, with the impact possibly of the warm spaces, and reminded people that the libraries are there, and there's been some work done on them, refurbishment, and particularly I know up at Mearns, someone donated a reading sofa, I think one of the businesses in the avenue, which is, you know, it's great to see that community, to encourage that. But obviously, there's also a key thing about our consultations with the neighbourhoods, 20 mile per hour zones. I was at a community council meeting the other night, and they were talking about how not everyone's online. They can't, you know, participate in the consultation. But I reminded them, obviously, that people are being written to in the neighbourhoods that are affected, and they're allowed to go to their library to actually get support from the staff. So it's that kind of partnership, and then you can see, obviously, so hopefully the numbers at libraries will continue to increase. So just wanted to mention that. So delighted with the report. Thank you.
I would just like to add that obviously myself and Councillor Anderson are both on the board of the Trust, so we're very familiar with this report, and it's not news to us. It is genuinely a remarkable set of results from them and performance, and particularly considering the recovery from COVID. I don't think anyone genuinely thought we would hit these sort of numbers and see this sort of bounce back actually ahead of pre-COVID levels. So it's incredible. So full credit to the Trust, because they really are delivering on all fronts at the moment, and that's great to see. That optimism and that success breeds success, and they're continuing to perform very strongly into this year as well. So, you know, when times are bad, it's great to see that there's a service that is just going from strength to strength and has got great confidence for the future. So that's really all I have to comment on that. So I think, unless there's anything else to add, I'd like to go to the recommendation in this paper, which is Cabinet is asked to comment on and approve the report as a summary of East Renfrewshire Culture and Leisure end year performance for 22-23. All agreed? Agreed. And we can draw this meeting to a close. Thank you very much.